Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Snowback. Today we are going to cover Unit 1, Lesson 3. Before we start on the actual note sheet, I wanted to do a quick review of graphing coordinates. Remember, when you have an ordered pair, the x comes first, the y comes second. And remember, the x coordinate, the x, if it's negative, means go left, and if it's positive, means go right. So the first number tells you left or right, and the y coordinate, if it's negative, means go down, and if it's positive, means it goes up. Where is the origin? Well, the origin, remember, is right here. The coordinate at the origin is 0, 0. Also, there are 4 quadrants on a coordinate grid. Quadrant 1 is right up here on the upper right. And I think that's because that's where x's and y's would both be positive. And then it goes counterclockwise. So over here is quadrant 2, over here is quadrant 3, and down here is quadrant 4. Do you know how to do Roman numeral 4? IV. So real quick review, like let's say you wanted to graph point M at -1, 4. So that means go left 1, up 4. Remember, when you count, you don't count where you start from. You count over 1 and then to the left 1 and then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the point would be right here. That would be M. And you don't really, of course, want these little marks on there, so I'll take those off. Let's try another one. Let's try A at 3, 0. So that means go which way? Goes right 3 and up 0. So it should be right here, and I'll put a letter A by it, point A. Let's do one more. So T, let's say T is at -4, -5. That means go which way? Left 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be right here. There's T. We spoke about this a little bit yesterday. For instance, if you have a line or a segment and there's some points on there and you want to find the distance between the 2 points, remember it's named by just 2 capital letters with nothing above it. This means distance from A to B. So on a number line, it's pretty easy, especially if they're whole numbers like this or integers like this. But there is a formula, and basically it's the absolute value of one of the numbers minus the other number. Now, absolute value, that's those 2 kind of tall, sticky looking things on the ends. So I think it's easiest if I just show you with an example. So down at number 1, it says find AC, find the distance from A to C. So one way to do that is to take the absolute value of A, which is -5, minus C, which is 0. Now, -5 take away 0 is -5, but the absolute value of -5 is +5. That's how far away from 0 it is. Now, on this particular number line, was there an easier way? Yeah, I think so. You could have just counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, it's a distance of 5. But let's practice using the absolute value method. Will you please try it for numbers 2 and 3 and see what you get? And then you can count it by check it by counting. So here are the answers. Basically, you just remember you take the absolute value of one of the numbers minus the other one. Absolute value means how far is it from 0. So -7 is 7 units away from 0, for instance. Next, let's talk about a midpoint. Now, to find the midpoint on a segment, it's basically like finding the middle or finding an average. And to find the middle or the average of 2 things, you're going to take one number plus the other number and divide by 2. And so if we wanted to find the midpoint of FH, like in number 4, F is at -3, H is at 5. So we add those together, divide by 2. Now, -3 plus 5 is +2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So 1 is likely the midpoint. The other thing that you can do is kind of count your way in. So you can go from H, 1, 2, 3, 4, and from F, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, 1 is in the middle, or G. Let's do number 5. Number 5, what is the midpoint of GH? So again, add them together, divide by 2. It's kind of like finding an average. So G is at 1, H is at 5. Add them together, divide by 2. You get 6 over 2, which is 3. So if you think about it, G is here, H is here. Does 3 look like it's in the middle? It sure does. It's the midpoint. Number 6, find B given A is the midpoint of BT. If A is the midpoint between B and T, that means it is right in the middle. It's different than just being between them. The midpoint is at the middle. So this side and this side will be the same length. And so that's exactly how you set up your equation to solve for B. The 2B plus 3 equals the 11. A is right in the middle. Then use your algebra, solve your equation. So take away your 3. 2B equals 8. Divide by 2. B equals 4. And we are done. Please pause the video, try number 7, and then check your answer. So you can see that we want to find the measure of PQ, and Q is the midpoint of segment PR, which means Q is right in the middle. So I set the two sides equal to each other and solved it and got y equals 4, but I am not done, because if you read the question carefully, they say find the measure of PQ. Well, that's this distance right here. So what I do is I take my y, which is 4, and I'm going to have to plug it in. So the distance from P to Q is going to be 14 plus 5 times 4, which I believe comes out to be 34. And in this case, there are no units, and so I can just leave it as 34. I'm going to have you try one more. So go ahead, pause, try number 8, and then unpause. So we're trying to find the midpoint of the two temperatures. Midpoint is middle, so it's like an average. Add them together, divide by 2. 25 plus -8, I believe, is 17. 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. We do have a label. It's degrees Fahrenheit. Next, will you please take a minute and go ahead next to the letters G, F, and H, will you write down their coordinates? So pause the video, jot down their locations. So G is left 7 down 2, so that should be -7, -2. F is right 1 down 1, so that's 1, -1. And H is over 6 up 5. So it's right 6 up 5, so 6, 5. Now we're going to work on finding the midpoint between 2 points that are not on a number line, but are on a coordinate plane. But it works kind of the same. And so what you're going to do is you're going to find the average of the x values and divide by 2, or add them together, divide by 2, and then you're going to find the average of the y values. So add them together, divide by 2. So basically you add your x's, divide by 2, and then you add your y's and divide by 2. Let's try number 9. What's the midpoint of FH? Well, the coordinate at F is 1, -1. The coordinate at H is 6, 5. So to find the midpoint, I'm going to take the x's, which are the 1 and the 6. I'm going to add them together, divide by 2. And then I'm also going to take the y's, which are the -1 and the 5. And I'm going to add them together and divide by 2. Now I need to simplify. So 1 plus 6 is 7, 7 over 2. -1 plus 5 is 4 over 2. So this, if I simplify it, I'm just going to do decimals. It becomes 3.5, 2. Let's see if that makes sense. 3.5 would be right 3.5 and up 2. Does this spot look like the middle between F and H? Yeah, it does. It does look like the midpoint. You guys go ahead, pause the video, try number 10, and see if you get it right. So take the x values of g and f. So you should have taken -7 plus 1 divided by 2. Then take the y values for g and f. So that's -2 plus -1 and divide by 2. Add them together, divide by 2. In this case, we get -6 divided by 2 and -3 divided by 2. If I simplify that, it is -3 comma -1.5. I'm going to check my graph and see if this looks like it makes sense. So midpoint is left 3 down 1.5. So left 3 down 1.5. Does that look like the middle between G and F? I actually think it does look like the middle between these two green dots. So looks good to me. Number 11 is maybe one of the trickiest questions we're going to run into today. It says find the coordinates of D if E, -6, 4, is the midpoint of segment DF, and F has coordinate -5, -3. For me, it helps to draw the picture. You don't have to, but I know E is at -6, 4. So it's approximately right here. That is E. And then F is at -5, -3. So approximately right here. And it says E is the midpoint of DF. That means D has to be somewhere up here. And I have to figure out where that is. So there's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you the shortcut way, the way that I think is a little easier. So remember how F is at -5, -3, and E is at -6, +4, and we have to try to figure out what is the coordinate up there at D. So the shortcut way, the way that I like to do this, is I look at the numbers, and I know -6 has to be in the middle between -5 and something. So to go from -6 to -5, I actually add 1. And so to go the other way, I'm going to subtract 1. And so if I take -6 minus 1, I get -7. That is going to be my x value at D. Now I'm going to do the y values. And so to get from 4 to -3, that actually is down by 7. +4 down to -3 is down by 7. So to go the other way, I'm going to go up by 7. So 4 plus 7 is 11. So 11 is my y value at D. So D, the coordinate, is -7, 11. Boom. Number 12. Do you think QR is congruent to PR? No way, right? So it says find the measure of PR. So we want to find the measure of the segment from P to R. And Q is the midpoint of PR. So Q is in the middle. That means this side and this side are the same length. And if Q to R is 6 minus 3x, then P to Q can also be 6 minus 3x. They can be the same. And so it's going to take, if you add the two small ones together, it should equal the big one, right? So in other words, 2 of the 6 minus 3x's should equal 1 of the 14x plus 2. And now we can solve. So we haven't done this yet, but remember this is called distributing. So we're going to distribute there. So we have 12 minus 6x equals 14x plus 2. And then just keep solving using your algebra. I would get the x's together next. So move the 6x by adding the opposite. You have 12 equals 20x plus 2. Subtract your 2. 10 equals 20x. And this is one you divide by 20. Most people get that. But then a lot of people get this answer wrong. It is not 2. It is 1/2. Is that our final answer? The answer is no. It says find the measure of segment PR. So you have to take that 1/2 and you have to plug it in for PR. So PR is going to be 14 times 1/2 plus 2. Half of 14 is 7. 7 plus 2 is 9. There is no label here, so the distance from P to R is 9. Last but not least, let's talk about the distance formula. Some of you might have had this in intermediate algebra last year, and some of you might not have. I'm not sure if you got to it with online learning or if it was prior to that, but this is called the distance formula. And the distance formula is used to find the distance between points on a coordinate plane. It's one method. There's other ways as well that we'll learn later this year, but for now, I want you to try using this distance formula. So first, we're going to try to find the distance from point F to point H. How far is that? Now you can see we can't just count it because it's diagonally across squares. So you can't just count the number of squares. F was located at 1, -1. H was located at 6, 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our x values and our y values. And it doesn't really matter which one you start with. I guess I'll just call this my first x and my first y. So x1 and y1, those are subscripts. They're naming the letters. And then this can be my second x and my second y. So that does not mean to square them or anything. It's just like the name of them. Now go up to your formula and start plugging stuff in. The distance from F to H, so instead of D, I'm going to say FH equals, and then I'm going to make that big square root. Then I'm going to make a parenthesis just like they have, and then I'm going to fill in x2. x2 is 6, so I'm going to go 6, and then it's a minus, and then I'm going to fill in x1, and x1 is 1. Close the parenthesis and square it. I'm just following this formula right here. Now you can see there's a plus sign, so I put a plus sign. Then I make a parenthesis. Now I have to do y2, which is 5, minus y1, which is -1. So minus -1. And then last but not least, we have to square. Start simplifying. You can type this in your calculator all in one swoop, but I tend to just simplify it a little bit. Makes it a little easier to type in. 6 minus 1 is 5, so that's 5 squared. And then remember, a minus a negative actually becomes a plus. And so 5 minus a -1 is actually 6 squared. 5 squared, 25. 6 squared, 36. Add 25 and 36. I believe it becomes 61. And so, is 61 a perfect square? Like, is it a nice number, the square root of 61? No, not really. It's somewhere between 7 and 8. I know that because the square root of 64 is 8. So I'm just going to grab my calculator now and type in the square root of 61. Go ahead and try that. Practice that. You should get approximately 7.8. And since they don't have a label, in this case, I'm just going to put units. I could have just left it blank. The reason I didn't leave it root 61, if I was talking to my friend about like driving from their house to my house, yeah, it's root 61 miles. That'd be really weird. So I like to change this to a decimal and say it's 7.8 miles. All right, I'm going to have you guys try the last one. So press pause, try to find the distance from point G to point F using our formula. So the coordinate at G should have been -7, -2. So if I want to find the distance from G to F, I'm going to make a big square root. It doesn't really matter which points I call which. So I'll just leave my green point at F there. I'll just leave that x1 and x2, or x1, y1, excuse me, and then I'll make this my x2 and my y2, and we don't need to use H this time. So here we go. I'm going to do -7 minus 1 squared. Then I'm going to do my y's. Now if I started with -7 in the first one, I have to start with -2 in the second one. If you have your points reversed, it will not matter. It doesn't matter which one you call the ones and which one you call the twos, but once you pick them, stick with it. You'll see at the end we'll end up with the same answer no matter which order we started in. So negative 7 minus 1 is actually negative 8. And then over here, the minus a minus, or the minus a negative, becomes a plus. So it's really negative 2 plus 1. So it ends up being negative 1 squared. If you don't feel confident, you can use a calculator, but try to do them in your head. It's good practice. Do you remember what happens if you square a negative? It should end up being a positive 64. Think about it. Negative 8 times negative 8 should be a positive 64. Now, if you typed it in your calculator like this, negative 8 squared, you're going to get the wrong answer. It's going to say negative 64 because it's only squaring the 8 and then sticking the negative in the front. That is wrong. If you're going to type it in your calculator, you have to type in parenthesis negative 8, close the parenthesis, squared, and then you'll get the positive 64. So make sure you use parentheses if you're using a calculator. All right, to finish off down here, now we have to add negative 1 squared. Well, negative 1 squared should be a positive 1. Negative times negative will be positive. Add them, you get root 65. And again, it'd be kind of strange to leave it root 65. So type that in your calculator, find out the actual answer. And I have approximately 8.06 units. And again, you don't really have to put units. I just like to. Whew, you made it through all those formulas. Good job. Next, I would like you to try Unit 1, Practice 3. If you get stuck, look back at the formulas on your formula sheet or note sheet. And if you're still stuck, then go ahead and send me a Schoology message. I'd be happy to help. So good luck on this one. Bye.